It's been discussed at length that live sports are one of the last connective tissues to a mass audience, as well as a big driver for linear TV. The other one, news media. For some brands, news has always mattered. When brands needed credibility, reach, or relevance in key moments, it played a critical role. But the way it's bought, sold, and consumed has fundamentally changed. As audiences split between linear broadcasts and streaming news environments, advertisers are being forced to rethink not just where they show up, but how news fits into their modern media mix. To make sense of all of this, we brought in Ocean media experts Imala and Kevin Cozine. So, I guess my first question would be, what is news media's relationship to linear from a performance standpoint? How does news advertising actually compare to entertainment or sports? What do you think, Amala?
Well, I would say, of course, you brought up sports, which is like one of the biggest audiences that you could have on TV. But news still holds its own. You know, it has a dedicated viewership there, and people tend to stay committed to what they know when it comes to news. So it's seen as like trustworthy and things of that nature. And also, if you think about it, we tune into it on a daily basis. So it's way more consistent and again, has a dedicated audience. So,
Yes, sort of to Amala's point there, I think what we could say about news is from an overall standpoint, it's a smaller audience than sports, but it's also reliable. For our clients in particular, performance-based news has always been a very consistent performer, and there are very, very few instances where a client buying news has not seen good performance there.
Kevin, are we seeing true audience migration from linear news to streaming news, or is it more audience adoption or
I think it's
duplication?
I think it's more audience adoption. I don't think, particularly since news does tend to skew older, I'm not sure. I don't think that there is a ton of evidence to say that people who were viewing their news on ABC, NBC, CBS nightlies are all of a sudden migrating over to different forms. They may be moving to different platforms as those become available. But I think it's more of an audience adoption. I think as the options become larger, I think you're seeing younger viewers, sure, getting more interested in news, but doing it on TikTok and Meta and different platforms as opposed to the more traditional outlets.
yeah, and I totally agree with that. I mean, like, I think the metrics now are over 60% of people see the news like using streaming or on social media. I know, for instance, I get most of my news from scrolling on Instagram and TikTok, but that doesn't negate from the fact that I do still watch it on streaming apps. So,
Yeah,
you get it
same.
in multi-screen, multi-layered.
So, how has the fragmentation of news distribution changed the way media buyers plan and allocate budgets, Amala?
Well, it's interesting because, um, I still feel like TV is king, but it's just that you're digesting TV in different ways now. With that, we're implementing news in fast channels. We also do streaming buys that may have news targeting layered in. Um, I know that some other clients have done some of the social aspects as well, being that that's not really my wheelhouse, but you can pick up news inventory anywhere pretty much now. So that's we're just moving with the changes. So
Yeah, I think it all depends. It's going to depend on the brand, and it's going to depend on the objective, the KPI. If it's broad reach, maybe it's broadcast news. If you're looking at engagement, it's a social play, or maybe more cable based. I think it's really going to depend on what your objective is, and then there are a lot more options on how to activate against them.
Shifting to streaming, you kind of alluded to it, but which news formats are translating best to streaming? Is that live news, clips, fast channels, like you mentioned, or on-demand segments? What do you think, Kevin?
I think just because of the nature of it, I feel like that more highlight based translates better. If you're looking for a quick hit, then it's easier to do it from your phone or from an app. In that aspect, if you're looking to sit down and engage with the traditional anchor. I'm going to date myself, even though it's certainly not been an option for a while. Like Tom Brokaw, you're still going to tune into the nightly news.
Right.
Yeah, and we totally see it here with our clients too. Like one size does not fit all. You know, you may have one client that the fast channels work really well, but then another client it may work even better when it's on the on-demand or targeted segments. So it really depends. Flighting, category, the creative, you really have to get down into the nitty-gritty of it.
So there's obviously been a big shakeup at CBS News with new management and what appears to be a new direction. How does the polarization of news media impact advertising, and how has that conversation around brand safety, I guess, evolved in news environments? Who wants to take that one?
I think it's funny because news has been polarized as long as I've been buying advertising. So I don't think that polarization is new. It's again just the amount of platforms and where you get those that information. I think with regard to CBS, it's really a flip of the script, right? A year ago, one particular side of the aisle was upset at how CBS was covering news, and now it's the other side. So the ship all rights itself eventually.
Fair.
But in terms of brand safety, I again the advice is just to be mindful of what your objective is. Listen to your clients, know who you're trying to reach, and then just keep an eye on things.
Kevin, is news still considered a must-buy environment for advertisers, or has it become a lot more situational?
I think that's going to depend on the client and the objective. As I had sort of alluded to earlier, it is a consistent performer. So if you're talking about a financial brand or a mortgage brand or something like that, uh, I do think it's important to have news in the mix. So I think it all depends on what the objectives are.
Yeah, I agree. When it comes to, of course, depending on the demo, but it still has great heavy scale. So the viewership is there. You know what you're getting. You know that there's dedicated viewers, and you can't go wrong with that.
Right. If I'm trying to reach 18 to 34-year-olds, I'm not putting a ton of money on CNN or MSNBC. MS Now, sorry.
If you had to give one piece of advice to brands navigating news in 2026, what would it be?
Again, it would be know your objective, be careful, and don't be afraid to pivot.
Amala, Kevin, thank you, and thank you all for watching. To learn more about advertising trends, brand strategy, and media investment, visit oceanmediainc.com for all the latest news and insights.